And I wanted to also ask you in a completely different area. In 2001, you were quite specific when you made your talks about, and we only had the female ancestors up, that at that you were telling us how it was quite important for you to have worked digitally with these ancestors because, I mean, I guess you might explain, well, you will bet much better than me about the idea of the marae and the pawpaw and your figures, but you were telling us that these ancestors were foremost in the past carved, and that was almost exclusively a male practice, and that for you it was a way to be able to image ancestors but not kind of breaking that convention. And I know a couple of the guys have asked us whether that's still the case, whether that was still a consideration with the male suite that you've done recently. And I guess that following on from that question, if you could just talk a little bit perhaps about that idea of how this digital marae works and the placement of them within a whare context. And also a little bit about the negotiation of, the protocols of it, because obviously that's something that you work with really closely, and it'd be, for our Australian audience, it'd be something that we wouldn't necessarily know much about. Phew. Sorry, I can remind you all the bits about A, B, and
C. I suppose when I was in my 20s and I went through art school and I was thinking about, as a young Maori woman who was distanced from where my father's homeland is, I was trying to develop strategies by which I could create work or just to find a way to develop a practice. And I was also very sad at that time when I was younger. I was quite sad because our marae up north is not carved. It actually has some weaving tuku pieces on it, but it's not a carved marae. And so the far north is one of the first places that New Zealand was colonised. So a lot of pieces and works were either traded, stolen and sent out overseas. So in terms of Ngāpuhi practice, or my father's tribal area, their style of carving, a lot of it actually went off overseas to Britain, to Germany. I mean, for me to see specific examples of our work, I would need to travel away. So in a way it was quite interesting because it creates a space by which to think about putting new things in there. So in some ways, by creating a vacuum, it's not like making the slate clean, but I do have a really interesting thought about that there are a lot of really amazing, I'm going to get into trouble with my other Maori artists here, but Ngāpuhi, there was an opportunity to create quite contemporary forms because there was a space to fill.
Yes.
And that Russian X but then also there is this concept, and it's not hard and fast rule, but a lot of men would undertake the carving. So what I did is initially I did a lot of works that were based on digital tuku and looked at female practice first because I needed to feel like I kind of set I suppose a whāneke or a mat or somewhere where I could then have my place to stand and then move outwards. So even though these works are photographs, I do think of them as carvings. And because of these, they are based on the sort of figures that you will see lining an ancestral house or a wharenui. I think you have to ask me another question now because I've forgotten myself.
I think that it'd be great if you could just elaborate, like I said, about how, when you walk into a marae, what you would see and how you see these as carvings, like what usually happens, in a marae, because most people might not.
Okay, in the marae, last night we had a greeting and you get called and welcomed into the house. A house has a female and a male side. It's like the west coast and the east coast. In any country, there's always a female and a male side. The female side would tend to be more tidal, the male side would be more kind of boisterous, and that's very true of in New Zealand, Aotearoa. And when you walk into a marae, for me, I would look for whoever is related to my iwi, Ngāpuhi. So you can sleep or stand underneath that ancestor, and by standing next to them, they are there to kind of back you up and to support you when you're within the house. Also within the house there is one entranceway and one window, so we've kind of reflected it in this space. There's the idea of one doorway that you walk through here, and the video component is, I think, for that as an idea of looking out into another world. It's kind of, there's some imagery there that's filmed when I lived in an apartment building in Karangahape Road, or K Road in Auckland. It's kind of quite a gothic look, but it was sort of also looking out in time, looking backwards and forwards. There's a spatial resonance about going up and down, under the water, up above the sky. So there's that kind of compass points that are within that. Within the house, I mean, we have a number of different figures in here. Some of them are traditional, they're based on mythological figures, although I don't really like that term mythology. They are, they're part of our oral history, our oral storytelling. And then also there's some quite new ideas that are appearing in here. Some of the figures are to provide a space to stand in the meeting house for my friends or takatapui friends who might be gay or lesbian, other, creating a space. So that's this image here of diva. Diva is the Italian word for goddess. She creates another language and another place for people to feel welcome within a house. That's where the community debate, share stories. You might have a wake, a funeral, a tangi for people. So many different things. The house functions in many different ways. The back of the meeting house is always where it's the idea that the light is te ao marama, the living, the day, and as you move back into the house, it's the darker, the older part of the house. And so in the middle here behind me is Ranganui, and from him, he is the beginning of our creation story. So all Māori can whakapapa or tell their history, and they relate that to Ranganui and Pawatuanuku. So here he's part of the cosmos. I suppose it's thinking about, we have the story of Te Pō and Te Kore, the long night, the nothingness, and how we come out of the thoughts, the light of the day, the beginning of consciousness. So it's almost like the idea of the Big Bang Theory. So there are kind of scientific concepts that are based within the works as well. And this particular star system was taken from, the photograph was taken in the South Island. It's of Pervades or Matariki. This is how we base our Māori New Year, which kind of happens in the middle of the year. And it was really important to me that this image was taken from New Zealand's soil rather than getting a NASA a photograph, because I think part of that integrity is kind of embedding it in very strongly in, from Aotearoa or from a Pacific perspective.